What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into the West Virginia postgame show here at the Voice of College Football channel and on the West Virginia channel here at the Voice of College Football, and also being simulcast on our channel here at the Country Roads webcast, which I am the host of. The Country Roads webcast there. We do the CRW podcast, cover West Virginia sports if you want to check us out. Mountaineers, unfortunately, fall yet again. So another post-game show after a loss here, 41-31, as you see down there on the bottom of your screen. The Mountaineers had chances in this game against TCU, but ultimately they dropped to 3-5 on the season overall. Now 1-4 in conference play. Steven may join me momentarily. I'm sure you guys know him, one of my co-hosts from Country Roads webcast. But for now, you guys, drop your questions, comments, concerns in the chat. We'll address them as we go throughout here. Plenty to talk about, I think, in this game. But I want to start, I guess, because I'm sure there's some things I have to say that fall on the opposite side of the coin. So I want to start off with some positive things to say that come from this game. Number one, I think Dante Stills becoming the West Virginia Mountaineers all-time leader in tackles for loss is great. Got to see that happen in this game for the Mountaineers. And for Dante Stills, a guy that chose to come back, for his super senior season, that's awesome to see. The Stills family's been really big legacy at West Virginia now. Three very successful players, and Dante Stills breaking a very long-standing record that Grant Wiley has held for quite some time at West Virginia as the career tackles for loss leader is big. So that's definitely one thing I wanted to mention for sure, talking positives. The other positive I think I wanted to mention about this one is that I was glad to see West Virginia come out and, show up for this game and fight and be in it and not get blown out, because I think that was a concern definitely for me, and I'm sure maybe for some others as well, not only with how West Virginia had looked in recent games, but with how injury-stricken the Mountaineers were coming into this game, especially on the offensive line. We learned, just a couple hours before the game that um, Doug Nestor was going to be out, in addition to James Gamitter already being out. West Virginia without Tony Mathis. C.J. Donaldson goes down at a time in this game. West Virginia had a lot of injuries on defense as well. Rashad Ajayi out, Jacoby Spells out, Lance Dixon out. So injury-stricken team that had been really struggling. I think that we all were expecting West Virginia to, not show up for this game, and maybe we were worried about a blowout. And so I think one positive thing to say is that they did show up. They battled this game the entire way. It was a one-score game most of the game. Late in the game, there's definitely some things to be mad about, and I'm sure we're going to talk about those here momentarily moving forward. But I definitely wanted to get off with some positives. Let's see, I got a little guest here popping in. Bradley from the CRW
Hey,
team as well, one of our co-hosts here. What's going on, Brad?
not much, man. I actually just got off of work. I have about a 30-minute drive home, so I thought I might pop in. Does this sound okay? Because I'm playing you over my car, so.
Yeah. Actually, you sound clear to me. So yeah. Hold on
All
just
right,
one
good.
second. Go ahead and talk. I
Yeah,
forgot. I got to pop my earbuds in.
gotcha. Yeah, I figured, at least give you somebody to talk to while we're waiting on Steven and Rod in here.
Yeah, absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, I was able to actually watch the whole game, so it's a pretty down day at work. So, yeah, to follow up on what you said, man, I think my big question for a couple weeks now is, has Neil Brown lost the locker room? And if anything, I think this game has showed me that he's yet to lose the locker room. Those guys came out and played. The fact that we were in the game may have helped that out. Came out swinging, and the fact that we were in it, guys didn't give up on it, and I think that that's super encouraging to see. Um, but man, it was a lot closer than I thought we were going to be. I thought we were going to get blown out for sure. Came out, especially with all the injuries, starting two new offensive linemen. Even at one point in time, Jordan White goes down. Things look scary. C.J. Donaldson's getting hurt. We're playing, another running back. But, man, they came out and they tried, and they gave their best shot at a team that has looked really great all year long. DB still looked sus as ever, but, I don't expect any different, so I'm not disappointed in it because I expect it to be that bad. Um, but yeah, man, we were a lot more in that game than we had any right to be, and, it does excite me that we haven't given up yet. I think that bodes well going forward, that we might steal a couple of games this year. So, yeah, definitely a positive that, guys didn't give up yet.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with you on that. That's if you had the question of, has Neil Brown lost the locker room? I think today shows you that he definitely has not. To not only come out and fight, but to come out and fight with, a lot of backups in there, especially, on offense, I think shows a lot. And, I think another, I guess it could be positive or negative depending on how you want to look at it, is that this team is like Jekyll and Hyde on the road and at home. At home, it seems like they really just play great, man. And, I think that showed that again today, a game that we weren't expecting to be in, with the injuries that we had and how good TCU had looked and how bad our defense had looked. And, I think our defense really made some impressive plays, especially in that second half with some of the stops they came up with, specifically on the goal line. And then they had another good stop after that as well.
Yeah, man. And I want to, this is specifically on that with that goal line stop. And I know that we've talked about this plenty of times now, but I'm going to keep highlighting them. The class of 22 for Neil Brown has been absolutely stellar. Raleigh Collins, true freshman. We tried to snag one of his teammates as well. I've kind of forgotten his name now because after he committed to Michigan State, I think it was Jalen. We've been really high up on Raleigh Collins. That's another guy we want to see more playing time from. But man, it's just frustrating to see the same old guys making the same mistakes, and we've got these young guys like Trey Lathan, Raleigh Collins. Those are linebackers. Granted, they're not really going to help a lot, cover wide receivers, but that young class has looked stellar. Jalen Anderson is a year before that, but, he was out for a year coming in. He looked good today, and the touches he got. And, C.J. Donaldson, all them. The class of 22 has looked great, which I think leads me to a point of I feel like we're in these games, and I think that we have the players to compete, and it really feels that we are literally just losing now because of coaching. We've got a young DBs, but, they've shown up when they can. But that end zone possession where you go jet sweep, quarterback draw, fade, that's coaching. That's play calling. And that's bad. And it just seems, that we've got the talented players to make games like this close, but then we just don't have, something's holding us back, and I can't help but feel like it's coaching at this
point. Right. I don't blame you for feeling that way. I think that's logical thinking, really. But I'm glad you brought up that drive there. That's one thing I wanted to bring up, because I'm not one to usually complain about play calling. And I think overall in this game, the play calling and the game plan that they had on offense was actually, pretty good, really good even at times. But I think that drive you're talking about where West Virginia gets the ball goal to go, C.J. Donaldson wasn't out at that point. He was still available in the game. And I think you see earlier in the game, West Virginia had a couple of successful drives, and in both those goal-to-go situations, they ran the football at least 2 to 3 times, resulted in a touchdown. One of them they ran it 2 times and then did a play-action pass to Justin Johnson. But in that situation, you only run the football once, which if you're going to run the football once, it probably should be C.J. Donaldson or Justin Johnson. The most questionable thing to me there is running a quarterback draw with J.T. Daniels. But they only ran the ball once there, and, they had been having success with it. So I was very, unhappy with the play call in there in that goal-to-go situation. I thought that was a critical point in the game, and they really made a mistake there.
Yeah, the J.T. Daniels quarterback draw was probably one of the most egregious play calls I've seen in a long time. I think he got his first 2 rushes of the season today, minus maybe a quarterback sneak somewhere that I forget. But yeah, today's the first time we've seen J.T. Daniels run on a critical red zone possession. First off, you're going to do a sweep surprise week. It's probably not even in your top 4 sweep options behind Sam James, Reese Smith, and Jeremiah Aaron. And they're going to follow that up with an up the middle with J.T. Daniels. Man, I just don't get it. And then, sure, you can go with the fade balls, but both of those were horribly thrown. Never really had a chance at them. And, it was just tough. It was tough to watch.
Yeah, I agree. It was very tough to watch there on that, goal to go. West Virginia had a lot of chances there late. So, getting over to the other side of the coin, talking a little bit more negative things now, that, like I said, the only issue I had play calling was that drive. And then on West Virginia's final drive, they get that stop, get the ball back just under 4 minutes remaining, trailing by 3, got to go 80-some yards. But what do they do on their first 2 plays? They try to throw a swing pass to Jalen Anderson and then to hand the ball off to Jalen Anderson on an outside zone play, which I just, nothing against Jalen Anderson. I thought, he did what he needed to do with the limited snaps that he had. He gave good effort and stuff. But to me, the issue is why the game on the line against the number 7 team in the country, you've got this drive to try and tie it up or take the lead. And the first 2 plays of that drive, you target a seldom used redshirt freshman who hasn't played since the Towson game and hasn't played in this game until the fourth quarter. So he's pretty cold, and your first two plays are, go to him. So I didn't know about that
Yeah.
one either.
Well, I'll defend the first play. I don't think that was a design swing pass to Jalen Anderson. I think that was a check down.
Right, it was just a check down, yeah.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate. It is what it is, and he dropped it. Maybe he gets a couple yards on that. The run with Jalen Anderson afterwards, I definitely am more sus about because, like you said, we're putting the game in his hands where I'd rather have, trust my former 5-star quarterback and our wide receivers that, even though if they haven't made plays, have drawn PI, and
right.
instead you're going to try to get the running game going when you're down, 2.5 minutes left, pivotal drive, you're trying to get some momentum going, and, you give it to a running back that's, got his, probably as many snaps today as he got in his time here in a Mountaineer uniform. Yeah, I just don't get that one. First one I can forgive because it's a check down. The second one, not so much, man. You got to stick with JT and just let that man sling it some more, even though he was not, up too far today. But
well, and I think that like leads into the bigger issue to me is like when we're down in these games like we are in the second half, we don't have any sense of urgency. We're still playing the same, methodical, doing these 14, 15 play drives like we were if it was the first or second quarter. We just don't see the urgency. I don't understand it.
yeah, and I'll even defend that some today. Because I felt the frustration. You got 6.5 left and you're driving down. You're down by 2 possessions. And you're driving, but I kind of got the sense of if you try to put the pedal to the metal and we score, which we've not scored on big plays at all this year. Our big plays are just not our forte. We are that methodical. But even if you do drive down there and score in a big play, you're turning around and putting your defense, which has been very, very shaky at best, and TCU probably turns around and scores quickly again. And so it's just, better, hey, this is a 2-possession game. Let's score a touchdown here, take up the time we need, and then hope that the rest of the defense has gotten with our timeouts. We can get a stop, which we did. I would rather, just bank on, instead of trying to have our offense score 3 more touchdowns and trying to keep up with TCU, run the clock out, score your touchdown, hope that you can stop them on 1 possession, and then, drive down to score and win it, So I kind of got that's where we were going with it and the feeling of it. Just, you would rather just take your time with it, score, make sure you score on 1 possession instead of pushing it and hoping that your defense can stop them for 1 possession rather than having, your defense scored on 2 more times and then trying to stop them, 3 possessions down the road when now you're 20, 30 more snaps in.
Yeah. I get that. That's a good point, though. That's a good point as well. Let's
I
go
get
to
it.
chat
It's frustrating,
here.
man, because it's like very anti what my football soul says. Down 2 possessions, put your foot. You need to score and you need to score now. But when your defense can't stop anybody, what's what's the point in scoring?
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's why I think they do design the offense the way that they have to be, more slow paced like that. And I think this game they did execute that better. That's one thing that they did in this game that they hadn't done, like against Texas Tech, which is something I thought they needed to do. They did need to do it this game and did a much better job of it for sure. So I will give them credit for that. But let's go to the chat here for some questions momentarily. Before we do, and before we get too far into here on the post game show, appreciate you guys for tuning in here. We're simulcasting on all 3 channels: the Voice of College Football channel, the West Virginia at the Voice of College Football channel, and the Country Roads webcast channel. Whichever one of those you're tuned in on while you're here, do us a favor, hit that like button. That'll really help this video's performance and then, help the future videos performances here on the channel as we try and grow this West Virginia channel throughout Mountaineer Nation. That'll really help us. And if you haven't, hit the subscribe button. Helps us, helps you, and helps get more of this Mountaineer football content out to Mountaineer Nation. That being said, let's pull it up here. Joey Foster. What's going on, Joey? Good to see you, man. He says, sorry, late getting in here. Have you guys discussed the onside kick? What would you have done? No, we have not yet, but I'm glad you brought it up because that's one thing I definitely wanted to get into a little bit. I hadn't really thought about it too much at the time. I was kind of indifferent. I think overall I might be kind of indifferent just because it didn't end up hurting West Virginia too bad. But what do you think, Brad? Would you have kicked the onside there, or do you think they should have kicked it deep where they still had all 3 of their timeouts and there was 4 minutes?
I honestly don't hate the onside kick. I actually said to myself on, I think it was the previous scoring before that. I don't remember if it was the field goal, if it was a touchdown, but I'm pretty sure it was the last time they scored before that. I had actually said to myself, I think we should just onside kick it now, because if you catch them off guard and you steal possessions, because that's where our team is at right now, we can't win through our defense, so we have to steal possessions when we can. And so, I told myself, really catch them off guard here, just go for an onside kick, because to me right now, it doesn't matter if the team's driving 90 yards or 40 yards. We're not going to be able to stop them, and so it's definitely a risky call, man. And, going for that onside kick, I still didn't hate it, and honestly, maybe it put TCU in a position where they're like, oh, well, they gave it to us in a short field. Let's, take a shot at it. And, they choked it,
Yep.
They choked it away. They really, instead of just running the ball, they get it down at their own 15-yard line. They're probably going, a little slower pace, trying to, string a drive together instead of being like, oh, well, we only got to go 40. Let's just go ahead and go 40,
Right. Yeah, yeah, and the announcers even on on the TV broadcast pointed that out as much when we kicked the onside kick, that they felt like that just shows Neil Brown doesn't really have a lot of faith in this defense, and rightfully so. I probably wouldn't either, so I don't blame him for the onside kick call. I mean, I don't think the onside kick was that well executed. Was kind of my more issue with it. It just went right to that guy, but either way, I'm not mad at the call. I guess if it would have turned out, TCU gets first and runs the clock out, maybe I would be, but with the way it turned out now, I'm pretty indifferent about it, I guess, overall. Let's see here. Dusty Scarborough says it's understandable to be frustrated as fans. The guys in the locker room know more than what the fans do. Coaches are doing the best they can with the injuries. Yeah, it's a good point. That's one thing pointed out at the beginning, is that I did like that the effort was there. The Mountaineers' fault. They were in this game. I thought they had a good plan overall. There were some mistakes at the end that you could put on, coaching or whatever you want to say. Really, you can go either way with that. But to me, I put it on coaching, because it's the same mistakes we've seen, for 4 years now, the costly penalties and things like that. And having said that, Brad, I want to get into one of the most negative things to me, and that, of course, is the end of the game. West Virginia not only has to punt, when they do get that ball back with the drive we talked about with the touches of Jalen Anderson, but the very end of the game, I think, is the part where that's going to leave the bad taste in Mountaineer Nation's mouth and have a lot of fans frustrated, and why a lot of fans probably are, still aggravated despite the things. And I hate it that it went this way, because it's probably going to overshadow, the strong effort that the Mountaineers shown and not getting blown out in this one. But the Mountaineers, get TCU down to 4th and 1. It's only 30 seconds left, but WVU has no timeouts. If you stop TCU on 4th and 1, you at least have a prayer, right there for a miracle at the end to tie it or take a lead with 20 some seconds left on the clock. But on 4th and 1, it's the thing of the undiscipline that the Mountaineers have shown, throughout these past 4 years, and that rears its head again as they not only jump off sides, but then the other thing that's been the problem this year, terrible coverage in the secondary, rears its head, as well as TCU throws it up and catches a touchdown to win the game 41-31 instead of, the 34-31 margin it was when you were still there fighting. So what were your thoughts? How frustrating is that for Mountaineer Nation? And, are they justified in having that kind of overshadow the good effort that the Mountaineers shown? Just because, in my opinion, that play was kind of a microcosm of the Neil Brown era, the undisciplined penalties and, just not being able to close it out at the end, in far more often than not, to me.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's frustrating, to say the least. And I say that a lot. It feels very redundant. But, it's just a raw feeling that you have, and I've got no better word to put to it. Because you've got a chance. It's very slim still, even at that point. And I don't know. Going forward on 4th and 1 there, I don't know if we are able to stop them no matter what the play call is. And maybe you can chalk it up to just the young players being antsy and jittery and knowing the severity of the 4th and 1 and really wanting to get a jump on it and make a play, because you think they're going to run it up the middle, and so you got to beat them to the ball. And it is what it is. But it's just one of those moments where I just threw my hands up, and I was just like, damn, like, it doesn't. And might as well,
Yeah. Well, you know what's crazy though is that's a really bad beat for some people because TCU had that 7.5
Yeah, the seven and a
line
half
at
line. That's my
least.
first thought. Is
Yeah. So I know some people were extremely happy, and then you had some people on the other side of the coin probably wanting to break their television. So yeah, it's a bad play all around, really. And but I think as far as West Virginia is concerned, I agree with you. It was definitely maybe inexperience or whatever, but it's just to me, it seems like in those situations that always seems to happen in this era. It has like whether it be on defense, making a dumb penalty like that. I mean, let's look at just this season alone. Go back to the Kansas game. A dumb penalty keeps Kansas's drive alive in overtime. And then I think if that's just defensively. If you flip it over on offense, you could look. I think almost it seems like this probably isn't accurate by any means, but it seems like almost every game in the Neil Brown era there's been a situation in that game where it's been 3rd and 1 to go, 4th and 1 to go, or on the goal line, 3rd or 4th down, and we false start. And it happened again in this game, 3rd and 2 or something like that, and we false start. I mean, and to me, it just goes right along hand in hand with those that just continually happen. So I think whereas it's something you can't put directly on a coach, that a player made that penalty late in the game, you can put it on the coach when it's something you've seen consistently happen over 4 seasons on both sides of the football, game in and game out.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see here what we got it going on in chat now. WV fan 23, good to see you in here as always, man. He said, "What happened to the red zone play calling in the second half? Those two fade passes were horrible calls." Yeah, we touched on it a little bit earlier, man. But it's like I said, I'm not one to usually complain about play calling, but that whole situation right there really had me baffled, especially with the red zone success West Virginia had, particularly in goal to go situations in the first half, running the football, at least 2 times in all 3 of the drives that they had touchdowns in that situation. And then on that possession, they get goal to go. And their first down calls the jet sweep to Bryce Ford Wheaton, second down, a quarterback draw to Daniels, and then 3rd and 4th down, 2 goal line fades, which, I didn't really agree with those 2 calls either. As you say there, fan 23. I know that it seemed like TCU was really, playing the run heavy and trying to stop the run when West Virginia got in the red zone in the second half after the success they had in the first half. So I think West Virginia was trying to counter that by maybe passing a little bit more, but I think maybe they overthought it a little bit and they should have just at least tried to run it. What about you, Brad?
Well, and I walked through like the first play. I kind of understood the jet sweep. You're getting low on running back. CJ Donaldson's already been beat up in this game a little bit. You're trying to expand the run game a little bit through that jet sweep, and trying to get some running through somebody else. Sure. Then you do the same concept with JT Daniels. I don't know if they thought, oh, we've scored on a very similar formula the first 3 red zone performances. So, like, let's switch it up on the 4th one and really catch them off guard. Well, you didn't catch them off guard. And then we go to a back corner fade 2 times in a row, which we may have hit once this year. We may have hit twice this year, and I think that we've had a lot more success on like a Caden Prather slant, something right across the middle, something that's quick. He's a big body. Let him run 3 yards and then turn his chest to you, and come across the goal line, give him a shot like that. We've seemed to have more success with that. And so I just don't know where that line just like crosses right there, where it's just like, oh yeah, let's just run 4 plays that we would not typically run in this scenario and just see if one of them gets lucky. And I just rubs you the wrong way. I say luckily TCU went down on the other end and tried to outdo us with their just ridiculous, red zone play calls as well, doing jet sweeps and this, that, and the other. But yeah, it's just one of the things, man. It's like you look at it and you scratch your head, and I'm not a coach and I don't get paid millions of dollars, but I don't think that I'm wrong in that assessment of just. I don't think any of us are wrong in that assessment of just, man, those play calls didn't work.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was pretty much a uniform opinion that I've seen from people that were talking about it for sure. And I think they just, like you said, they tried to maybe switch it up, and I think they overthought it. They thought it, and it cost them there. Here's a good question from Misplaced Hillbilly here. He says, "Where's Graham Harrell's offense like he's famous for? Is Neil Brown holding him back?" And that's something that I was kind of thinking about when I watched this game, specifically when there was one play that we ran where we went under center and Sam James is like on attached on the line, hiding behind the offensive lineman, right? And we ran a little handoff to him on end around, kind of sneaking by. And the reason that this question I wanted to touch on it because that play right there, I had seen us run that back in 2019 and 2020 in Neil Brown's offense, and I don't know if just so happens that Graham Harrell runs that too, but I'm one that's been in the camp that I think Neil Brown had a hand in this offense more so than he's gave Graham Harrell full autonomy as far as Graham Harrell calls the plays on Saturdays. But I think the way the offense was crafted and some of the plays and the way it's designed in the offseason, for this season in 2022 when they were leading into it, I think Neil Brown had a big hand in that personally. What about you, Brad?
Yeah, I definitely felt like Neil Brown had a hand in it. Kind of like you said, not necessarily like play by play, but schematically overall and on fourth down calls, you know? And yeah, you definitely just see some of it from Neil Brown. And I think that I had said early on in the season that, we paid Graham Harrell good money to come in here and really change things up and to make the call that Neil Brown's afraid to make. And it still kind of feels like like you said, like his hands are in there, his smell is on the play. It's just I think we've all been under the assumption that we brought in Graham Harrell to kind of do the things that Neil Brown couldn't, and he really needed to take his hands out of it. If he has or not, I don't know. But if he hasn't, then that's a big issue.
That's what I think that we thought we were going to get Graham Harrell coming here and get a Graham Harrell offense that he's designed to run his way. And what we're actually getting is, Graham Harrell, being the play caller, but this isn't, truly just Graham Harrell's offense. What we're getting is a marriage of the Neil Brown offense we've seen for the past 3 seasons prior and a little bit of, Graham Harrell flavor to it. Because Graham Harrell didn't come in and, get to do whatever he wanted. Graham Harrell has come in and Neil Brown has said, we're going to brainstorm and take some things that we both like. Here's the things that we're going to have. These are the things that we must do. We must do X, X, and X, which to me was possess the football, be balanced, X amount of run plays, stuff like that. And, Neil Brown will probably wanted to keep some of his stuff in there as well because some of that stuff that I've seen us run this season is specifically stuff that we have ran for the past 3 seasons. And it's very particular plays that I don't think Graham Harrell would run as well. And having watched some of, USC's game in the past and even North Texas a little bit when he was there, I know what Graham Harrell's offense looks like when it's fully his offense. And what we've seen at West Virginia in 2022 isn't fully his offense. It's a marriage of, what we've seen under the Neil Brown era and his a little bit. That's my opinion for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. Let's see what else we got here in chat. Saw something else I wanted to see here. Oh, yep. Dr. Piv, fate of this team was sealed with 40 plus defections prior to the season start, many of which were mission critical. Misfires on the replacements. Over under on defections this season, 30, 40. Yeah, I think that's something that really we all misjudged in the offseason. And when I say all, I mean not only us as fans thinking that, the guys we lost, we'd be able to plug and play when we lost, 4 members of the defensive backfield. I think that was a bigger loss than we thought. And I think the coaching staff as well, some of the guys were asked to leave, some of the guys left on their own. But I think they thought they could plug and play, some of these FCS guys as well. And as you say there, Dr. P, certainly misfires on the replacements. As far as defections this season, I really don't know. That's tough to say. When you have a team that's unsuccessful, people are likely to leave. Who knows what's going to happen with, the coach. If they decide to go another way, that could lead to more. And if you choose to keep him, could also lead to more for people that aren't on board with what he's doing. So I don't know. It's really tough to call. If, we had 40 plus last year, I would hope we don't reach that. I would hope it's closer to 30 though. Brad, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely been a miss. And it's been, because we heard all offseason, we're replacing X amount of snaps with Y amount of snaps. And, we're bringing in some guys that have played for 4 years that are seniors. And, to my knowledge, or just like my thinking behind it, and I don't know if this has been everywhere, but man, when you're bringing in some of these transfers, yeah, they played a lot of ball, but I think that, sometimes they bring some bad habits with them, and there are things that don't necessarily get picked up when you're an FCS player playing against an FCS player. But when you're an FCS player and you're backpedaling, running with a Big 12 wide receiver, and he takes one step in the dirt and sends you completely the other way and has an open 55-yard reception down the middle, man, like I think that, it's discipline. And I think that, that kind of bad habits that just don't get exploited, don't get exposed at a lower level, just really come to light. And I think, I don't know if that's something, other schools are dealing with transfers, because I don't particularly keep up with a lot of other programs like that. I'm pretty much just a West Virginia fan. But yeah, man, definitely miss out on some of these transfers. And it feels almost like, the guys that we've had in our system for a year, or, we recruited specifically for our system and, we've been able to mold them up, have done better than the guys that came in with more snaps. And that's where my brain goes with it. It's just the fact that, these younger guys haven't had a chance to build up those bad habits, where trying to break them down and rebuild somebody that's coming in is a bit tougher than just building them from the jump.
Yeah, I agree. Got a good follow-up question here from Misplaced Hillbilly. I'm going to let you answer that one. My dog's going crazy. I'm going to check on that real quick.
Gotcha. It says, do you think our defense is a result of portal or the defensive coordinator? I think that the portal has played a bigger role. So I definitely think you can't have one without the other there. Misplaced Hillbilly. And my logic behind that thinking is, losing people to the portal is definitely a big deal. And I think that bringing people into a new system is, tough. And other schools have done better at it than we have so far, definitely, without question. My thing when it comes to the defensive coordinator is we haven't gotten any better, and through 7 games through the season, you would hope to see some kind of improvement. And I feel like we have not seen any improvement. And I think that's where I start to look at the defensive coordinator and, Jordan Leslie and Trydon Brown and wondering, when we're still lacking at the fundamentals, what are we doing? What's being done in practice? We can't tackle, we can't cover, we can't have good discipline. There's not one redeemable part of our game right now that I can look to and point at and say that we've gotten any better this year. And so just to catch you up, Jordan, my response to this question is it's a bit twofold. Losing guys to the portal is definitely a big deal, but not seeing improvement so far this year through 7 games, not seeing anything get better, is something that I put on the coordinator and the defensive coaches.
Yeah, I'd agree. Listen, I think the portal played a role as far as, I think one thing that we've been, on the staff about is can they judge talent? Can they, are they a good judge of talent? And I think more so, in my opinion, I think that they're not a bad judge of talent because we see some of these young guys really showing out, what you touched on a little bit earlier, the Raleigh Collins. I mean, Trey Lathan was West Virginia's highest graded player on defense last week. We've seen Jacoby Spells make plays, this season. I know he was injured and out for this game. And even on offense, some of the young guys they brought in, the Caden Prathers, the Justin Johnsons, things like that. We've seen those players do good. So I think they're a good judge of talent overall. I think they've really just missed in the portal, specifically defensively. I think, getting Charles Woods and him becoming the superstar that he did maybe gave them this false sense of security, or this false, this false belief, I guess you could say, that any FCS defensive back was going to, turn out the same way, and it hasn't worked that way. So I think they've missed on the portal. But to your point, Brad, I think that my issue with the defense has been since the loss of Jamal Adai, because if you look back, in 2020, and I've made this point before, West Virginia had the number 1 pass defense in the country that year when they had Jamal Adai and Jordan Leslie as co-defensive coordinators. But Jamal Adai's specific responsibility was running the back half of that defense, which is what helped make it so strong and helped, make it the number 1 pass defense in the country. And that offseason, West Virginia decides to, make Jordan Leslie full-time defensive coordinator. Jamal Adai leaves. West Virginia goes and gets Shadon Brown and decides, hey, I think we can maybe plug him in, have him run the back half of the defense. And it worked similarly. And I think they made a mistake there. In number 1, probably choosing Leslie over Adai was definitely a mistake. And number 2, thinking you could bring in another coach to do what Adai was doing and it would be just plug and play, didn't work out either, in my opinion, since 2020.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, it's very up in the air right now whether Brown's going to be here at the end of the year or not. I'm leaning more towards not. But if he is, I definitely see another conversation coming, like what we had at the end of last year, where it's like, hey, your offense isn't working out. You know, you're going to have to find you a new coordinator. And, Neil Brown was willing to make that sacrifice and cut one of his friends loose. If he stays, I don't think there's any way that he's going to be able to um, not make the same decision he made at the end of last
Yeah, that's one thing, Oh, there goes Brad, but he may have lost signal or something. I know he was on the road, but that's, to his point, that's one thing that I think stands out to me is um, someone may have to be, I don't know. I'm almost starting to lean more into the camp that I don't think that it's the right decision in my opinion. It's not the decision that I would make, but I'm almost starting to think it's more likely that Shane Lyons brings Neil Brown back for 2023 than we see a head coaching change. That being said, if West Virginia ends up, 3-9, 4-8, whatever they do on this season, somebody's going to have to be the scapegoat. There's going to have to be some type of change. I don't know if it's Jordan Leslie. I don't know if it's Shadon Brown, but you got to think it'll probably be someone on the defensive side. If after last season, when you struggled on offense, the offensive coordinator, Jared Parker was kind of the scapegoat and they went another way there, you got to think it'll be the same case on the defense, and maybe it's Jordan Leslie or Shadon Brown, one or both.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it is both. Maybe you keep Coach Jackson. He's been able to get his defensive line to provide results at least. So there is that. But yeah, you're going to have to make changes on that back end if you want to keep your job, and you're likely to keep your job at that. And if Shane Lyons decides to keep Neil Brown and we have another down season last year, I don't think that there's any way Shane Lyons keeps his job either.
Yeah, that would be, I think, the case for Shane Lyons is like, I've mentioned before, he's stuck in between a rock and a hard place making this decision because, if he fires Neil Brown, he's admitting he failed. But also, if he keeps Neil Brown around, he's really hitching his wagon to that and hoping Neil Brown is successful next year. Because if he's not, he's going to be, out with him in that case. So, he's really got a lot of faith in him if he does choose to do that. But Dr. Piv here says, some positives. CJ looked good. BFW with a great catch, good contested catch there. James with a productive game. Yeah, shout out to Sam James. I thought he showed great effort today. And then Dante setting an all-time record, which is definitely, that's what I led the post-game show here with, actually, was mentioning Dante. I wanted to mention some positives, and that's definitely one I wanted to mention was Dante, now the all-time career leader at West Virginia for tackles for loss. That's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about some positives too because
Go ahead.
Towards the beginning of this podcast, I brought up I'm not that beat up about this loss. I mean, by all rights, it's a game we should have lost. We should have only lost it by 3 points, not 10 points, but we should have lost it by more than that, quite frankly. I think that the offensive line played well, missing two of our big pieces. Still don't know. We missed the post presser, so we don't know exactly why Doug Nestor was out today. But Jordan White and Thomas Remack, we did let up a couple sacks, just missing assignments. But other than that, we were able to run the ball, and JT Daniels did have time. I think that sometimes he kind of tried to force the play and, took a couple sacks because of that instead of just throwing the ball away. But I thought our offensive line overall played really well. And I thought, our running backs played well, our wide receivers. Bree Smith had an amazing catch. Sam James had some spunk to him, and I loved that. He was out there drawing with people and, telling the guy he couldn't guard him, and quite frankly, he couldn't. Bryce Ward-Wheaton went up and caught some contested catches. Caden Prather made some plays. Charles Woods, man, I missed that guy. His first jump on that screenplay, the first possession, I think, for TCU just got me so excited. Defensive line played well. They were batting balls down, doing the right things. Really it's just, the one spot where we're weak, DBs and linebackers, quite frankly, we hound on the defensive backs a lot, but our linebackers have just not been on the field at most times. Lee Pogba gets his head up in there sometimes, but, they're just incredibly undisciplined, man. Incredibly undisciplined. But, outside of those two groups, really, I would say our team performed really well today.
Yeah. Speaking of, the linebackers, the one thing that stands out to me is I don't know if it was, a bad play call or if it was just something TCU did because I know they did some motion, so maybe they did that to be able to get to this matchup. But when you had Lee Koba matched up one-on-one with the slot receiver from TCU on that first, I believe it was their first touchdown, the 70-yarder. That's was a recipe for disaster there. So that's not something that you wanted to see for sure. If we're talking bad play calls on offense, I don't know if that was a play call thing on defense, but that's definitely one of the bigger negatives that stuck out to me. We've been dealing with alignment issues on defense and stuff like that, and that's definitely a matchup issue.
Yeah, and it seems to be, they even called out Wesley McCormick when he got beat on that play that I'd kind of mentioned earlier, that he was, edging to the outside, that he expected to have, some help over the middle, and it just wasn't there, and that's just a communication issue. And going back to Hillbilly Near, I think was his name. I'm sorry if I forgot your name out there, listener. But, talking about, coordinator issues, that's a coordinator issue, not having your team to where they can communicate, and there's just misunderstandings every game. Like, that stuff that can be cleaned up, and it just hasn't been.
Yeah. I know. It's an issue. It's an issue. Snowlord 1999 says, if Brown is still our coach, I'm predicting us to get blown out by Iowa State. We've proven we are horrible on the road in Big 12 play. I don't think he survives till next week. Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit earlier. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde thing almost, where this team's completely different at home and on the road. So I'm a little bit worried about that in Ames, especially with, it's a really tough place to play there, and also like this is a battle of, so whoever wins this is trying to stay out of the Big 12 basement, because whoever wins this, is going to be down there, hopefully, or, not hopefully, I guess, but you don't want to be there. So hopefully you want to win this game, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Hopefully it's not us.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully it's not West Virginia, but, I'm afraid of that possibility. But to your comment about Brown, I just don't see that happening, Snow Lord. West Virginia, like I've mentioned it before, traditionally they just don't fire coaches midseason, not really something they do. I think it'd be more likely that if anything, there would be an announcement that they were parting ways at the end of the season. I just don't see West Virginia firing, Neil Brown midseason at all. And I'm starting to question if they're even going to fire him at the end of the season with how quiet things have been from the athletic department.
Yeah, and I feel the exact same way. I don't think we're going to fire Neil Brown midseason. And I had said before this game, when I was able to, comment on our live stream, that if we got blown out or if we rolled over this weekend, that I thought that we would part ways with Neil Brown. Neither one of those things happened. We didn't roll over. We didn't quit. We played through this game. We fought hard. We kept it close up to the very end, and it should have been closer than what it was. I don't think Neil Brown loses this job because of this performance. And I think that, people can be mad about a loss, but, it matters to me that our team didn't quit. And I've said it several times now, and I'm going to keep pounding it away because I truly feel this way. Coming into the season, I said I didn't care if we went 5-7 as long as our team looked better, played better, and fought. And, we looked better today, and we fought. Yeah. And we might have lost, but, I wasn't embarrassed by the product that we put on the field today.
No, I wasn't either. And that's one of the, the other positives that I led with, to start the show out, behind Dante Stills' tackle for a loss, becoming the career leader there, is that I was glad to see that the team, showed up and fight, especially with, the injuries that we thought. I know I personally thought, and, Steven as well, on the preview podcast, we both predicted, a significant loss for West Virginia. So we were all kind of worried about a blowout and worried about the team not showing up. And I think them showing up and fighting was awesome to see, and showing that they're not giving up, just yet, regardless of, the negative noise that's going around in the fan base. This team's still fighting. And I think that's something that can at least make you proud in this game, is that they fought with the number 7 team in the country. They had the, the lead at points in the game. It was one score game back and forth. And I hope, that the way that it ended, because I know that was terrible with the offsides penalty and them throwing it up for a touchdown. I just hate that that's probably going to overshadow the fact that they did show up and give good effort, but it is what it is. Misplaced Hillbilly here says, what do you think of Gary Patterson coming to change the defense, if not head coach? Personally, either one, I would be behind. I love it. I think that'd be great personally. What about you, Brad?
Yeah, Misplaced Hillbilly. I really love Gary Patterson. I personally would not take him as a head coach. If he couldn't get it done at TCU, I don't see him getting it done here. But as a defensive coordinator, I don't know how you could ever argue against that. Gary Patterson's one of the best to ever do it. would absolutely be a program changer, honestly, on the defensive side. He's not Texas's defensive coordinator, right? He's just a defensive coach.
Yeah, he's
Or is he?
I think I thought he was. I don't know if he's an analyst or just an assistant. He might be a position coach, but I thought he was an analyst. But I could be wrong. He could be one of their position coaches or something. But no, he's definitely not the coordinator.
Yeah, I would definitely take him as a defensive coordinator. And I kind of get this feeling that Brown. Yeah, he does the head coaching stuff right, but just I think that him being so attached to his friends and not being willing to make those changes until it almost gets too late has really hindered him, man, because he's been able to build the culture and he's been able to recruit the kids and he's been able to do X, Y, and Z, but our offense sucked until we got a true offensive coordinator. And our defense was great when we had Jamal Adai, who is probably going to be a great defensive coordinator soon. You lost Vic Koenig. People can point to that, sure. Vic Koenig had great defenses, and we, let him go because of his, insensitive remarks and making players feel uncomfortable and, that whole controversy. But, it almost feels like if Neil Brown wants to continue to coach at a Power 5 level, he's going to have to just, accept the fact that he does, the head coaching things right, but he doesn't necessarily has not done the other part right.
Yep. And what's most disappointing to me about that is that, to me, the reason West Virginia loses, games is like they find ways to lose games rather than to win games. And I think what always ultimately ends up costing them, it seems, is like the little things, the minute details, the fundamentals, the costly penalties, the mental mistakes, just stuff like that. And what's most disappointing about that to me during this coaching, regime was that going into it, that's one of the things that we were most excited about with Neil Brown is that he does, he's so detail oriented. That was like the main thing that people said about him was, he's going to get all the little down to the finest detail. And it's like, but that's actually what's costing us is that we're not good down, on the small details, the fundamental things. It's those things that are actually hurting us and have been detrimental during his tenure.
Well, to me, it feels like the reasoning behind that is that he's too much in the details. When you get caught up in the micros, you miss the macro. And he tried to be a part of everything so small, and that really diluted himself to where it kind of just like took away. Whereas if he had an offensive coordinator like Graham Harrell that knows how to run an offense and to really put some good positional coaches in there and kind of direct that and have that offensive side of the ball be under his control, and have a defensive coordinator that knows how to do the exact same thing and let those guys focus on the details of their task at hand, then you'd probably be more productive with it rather than trying to have your hand in everything and try to be like, oh well, why don't you do it this way in this detail and fix this, letting people have their own little stamp on what's going on and just trusting the fact that you've got the right people in the right places with the right kids. And it feels like we're so close to having that. And, you just got to believe in it. You got to trust your own climb, Neil Brown. You can't say that you believe in it and then not trust, the bird to fly out of the nest, so to say.
Yeah. That's true. Mike Hudgens says I lost a bet because of that last touchdown. Yeah, we touched on that a little bit earlier. That was a really bad beat, man. If you had, West Virginia covering, that one hurts right there at the end. But that's what we were saying. There's some people really excited that had TCU covering, and then the people that had West Virginia covering were ready to break a TV or something. Dr. Piv with a good update here says CJ Donaldson is not good, in quotes, is the quote he says. Neil Brown says, dealing with a lower leg injury. Man, I hate to hear that after, he fought back from that concussion and looked great again today, over 100 yards rushing. So that sucks. I really hate to hear that for him. I hope he can make it back before the end of the season, and hopefully it's nothing that's going to hurt him long term. But on the more positive side, he does expect Doug Nestor to be back next week on the offensive line, so that can only help things there as well.
So if CJ Donaldson's out, that leaves us with a semi-banged-up Justin Johnson and Jalen Anderson, which is, one of those guys, 4-star recruit, has had potential. After that, we have, is it Marcus Ruffin?
No, Marquand Rucker.
Marquand Rucker. Sorry, I was getting his name a little bit
walk on.
Was getting, do we see Garrett Green line up as running back?
I mean, might as well. He's looked good when they've put him in there and thrown the ball to him. And when he gets the ball in space, I like it. So I mean, put him all over. Line him up beside JT Daniels. I mean, pull out all the stops. You're 3-5 now. You got to win. If you want to get to a bowl game by some miracle, you got to win 3 out of your last 4. So no, like what is
Yeah,
the
I
old
mean,
quote from the Water Boy? Last game of the year, to pull out all the stops now. Can't
yeah,
afford to lose hardly anymore. So.
yeah, because I just don't know. I don't know what else you do because you can't travel with, you know, because I mean, Marquand Rucker's not even. He's a walk on, right? Like, am I crazy?
Yeah,
Like
they may have been got him a scholarship now, but I know he was a walk on. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know
man.
if
I
they
just
ended
don't
up
know how
giving him
you
a
look at
scholarship. But
Jalen Anderson, Justin Johnson, both 4-star athletes. Running backs. Justin Johnson's he's gotten beat up. I just don't know if you can rely on only having 2 solid running backs and Marquand Rucker. I don't know why you wouldn't consider, putting one of your best athletes back there and just let the guy run at least.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against it. That's for sure. But who knows what we'll see. West Virginia gonna have to get creative. Probably on both sides of the football with some of the injuries. Jay Morris got it scrolling right there on the bottom of the screen. 41-31. TCU scored a touchdown there on that last 4th and 1 to get the 10-point win to cover the 7.5-point spread, to the dismay of Mike Hudgens here in the chat. Sorry about that, Mike. I know that's a tough one. I hate those bad breaks. Let's see what else we got here. Dr. Piv, to our point earlier, Brown's so focused on everything. He's focused on nothing. Job appears too big for him and his approach. Excellent analyst, poor at actually fixing issues. Yeah, it kind of seems that way, Dr. Piv. I don't disagree with you there. And I think in-game coaching is also, questionable at best to me, I think, with a lot of the decision making that goes on there sometimes as well, in my opinion. And adjustments as well being falling underneath that. Jay Morris says winning is a mindset built in minds by a culture of being a winner. And we definitely certainly don't have a winning culture right now. If that's one thing we definitely do not have. But
Yeah,
appreciate everybody that's chimed
and that
in the
kind of
chat right now. Go
yeah
ahead,
that
Brad.
kind of brings up is adjacent to something I had been wanting to talk about. Neil Brown has talked about in his last couple of pressers about just not having a vocal leader, having very quiet leaders and not really pushing those guys outside of their limits. And, I can't help but feel that, those guys kind of embrace and are the face of kind of like the essence that Neil Brown has had. It hasn't always felt like Neil Brown was an adamant, vocal, passionate leader. I know he loves the program and I know he, get out there and cares, but I feel like, if there's something that we've lacked, if there is something that we've lacked in the past 4 years, it is just lacking the it factor. We haven't had a quarterback with an it factor. We haven't had a player with an it factor. We haven't had a group with an it factor. You could say that our DBs in his first year or two had the it factor when they were the number 1 defensive backs in the country, but I would say that they had an it factor coach. And that was my biggest gripe with JT Daniels, is he just never had it. And I think that the part of me now feels like that's just not something that Neil Brown has done a good job of cultivating in his culture. He's done with the things he has done right. I feel like that's something that we just lacked, is building up those players that just have that moxie and confidence and it factor.
Yep. I'd agree with you 100%. And I think that's another thing that, really threw me for a loop, because it seems like almost everything we were sold has turned out to be almost the opposite. And I don't know if that's, on Neil Brown for, presenting something and, not following through on that, or if that's, misjudgment by people that were talking about him, like I said earlier with the detail oriented thing. And then like you just said now with the it factor thing, that's something that we've talked about, on our, on the CRW podcast over there at the Country Roads webcast. Our podcast when we hired him was that we thought he had the it factor, and that's one of the reasons we were so excited. And it's like the opposite has been true in a lot of cases. So it's been a really weird 4 years for sure. BMC, thank you for chiming in. He says WVU can't win with Brown as head coach. Definitely don't disagree with you up to this point. And, I think West Virginia's got to take a look. If they don't, end up with a win, they finish this year 3-9, with one win coming against, an FCS opponent. That should be unacceptable moving forward. So a lot, of Neil Brown's future, I think, depends on, if the teams that he beat end up being bad teams. I think Virginia Tech's definitely proven to probably be a bad team. And then if Baylor ends up near the bottom of the Big 12, that's not helping his case either. If, both of his two wins that are against Power 5 teams or against Power 5 teams that finish near the bottom of their conferences, that's not going to help his case either. So I don't know.
He is
Moving forward,
undefeated against
Brad.
Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I mean, he did keep us the Black Diamond. We do have that going for us. There's definitely not all negatives, but moving forward in the season, Brad, we'll be here to talk about each of the last four games with the West Virginia post game show here on the Voice of College Football channel and the West Virginia Voice of College Football channel, and on our channel over at the Country Roads webcast. Which subscribe to the West Virginia channel if you haven't already. We're trying to get it up to 1,000 subscribers, and of course, subscribe to our channel if you want to as well. Country Roads webcast. We cover Mountaineer sports. If you're a WVU fan, definitely give us a follow. We put out plenty of content. And while you're in here, if you're watching this live or if you're catching this on the playback even, hit the like button. Really helps this video's performance and help future videos performance as we try and grow these West Virginia channels throughout Mountaineer Nation. But that being said, Brad, looking ahead a little bit, Iowa State up next on the slate, but West Virginia has 4 games left. I know I don't even want to ask you about a bowl game because to me that just seems like a pipe dream in my opinion, but you can chime in on that if you want to too. But I just want to say, I mean, is there a number of wins Neil Brown has to win in these final 4 games for you to even think about for you personally where you'd want West Virginia to keep him, or has the ship kind of sailed for you? And then to go along with that, do you see West Virginia having a chance in these final 4 games to, get a win or two?
He has to win some. Losing out is completely unacceptable. Puts you at the bottom of the Big 12. I'm slightly off the fence now, leaning more towards just being rid of Brown at the end of the season. I don't know where we go after that, but I'm definitely off the trust the climb train and leaning more towards being done with Neil Brown at the end of the season. I could see a position where he kind of saves his job, has to make some tough decisions in the off season. I wouldn't be mad if we kept Neil Brown because I love the guy. I love the culture he's built. I just have really been frustrated with this football. And, like I said, if Shane Lyons thinks that he's the man and wants to go in on it, I'm going to support him next year. I'll be there with it. But I don't think that there's a certain number. I think that either by this point in time, unless he loses out at this point in time, either we know that we're going to keep him or we know he's going to go.
Yeah, I think so too. I think whatever side of that fence you're on, you're firmly on that side of the fence. Me personally, right now, I'm like the ship has sailed. I'm ready for a change wholesale. I know that, but I feel like in my gut, for whatever reason, I feel like he's going to be here in 2023 as the head coach still. With other changes, like we said earlier, something's going to have to change. Somebody's going to have to be the scapegoat for this losing season. The West Virginia is, almost certainly, on their way to at this point. Somebody's going to have to be the scapegoat, probably someone on the defensive staff. Who knows who it'll be if he does come back. But I'm certainly ready to move on. Wholesale changes, whole new staff, head coach, everything. I'm just ready for, new taste in my mouth, renewed hope, whatever you want to call it. And I think we need to unite the fan base again. That's the thing. When we brought in Neil Brown, felt like we united the fan base. Now 4 years later, it's split again. So to me, I think it's just too far gone, in my opinion. But I don't know if that's going to happen, is where I'm kind of at with it.
Yeah, I think for me, I think Jordan Leslie's got to go. I don't see how you're going to get any of this fan base behind anything unless you clear house a bit on the defensive side. And, Graham Harrell really got people's opinions turned around on the offensive side of the ball. And by all all metrics, he's kind of upheld his end and kind of got this offensive turned around. He's keeping us in games. But, could you have that same reaction with hiring a Gary Patterson for, say, a home run, defensive coordinator hire, and just being like, if you can't do it with this, then you can't do it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against it. Like I said, I'm with you. Like I like Neil Brown. we've said before he's done everything right at West Virginia except produce on the field with wins. What he's done with the program recruiting wise, the fifth quarter program, you can go on with things. I won't get into a deep list or anything right there. We don't have that much time, but so I mean, as much as I want a wholesale change and I'm ready for a change and the ship sailed for me personally, I'm not going to not support the Mountaineers if he comes back next season. I'm still going to be here watching all 12 games, covering the team just like we always do every year. And I'm going to be just as excited and hopeful and hoping we can win every game. But there certainly has to be some type of change. And like you said, who knows? We renewed hope this season, and then we were hopeful going into it when we thought we were fixing the offense. And if we think we're fixing the defense and keep some things in place on off season, who knows? We may all be excited going into 2023, even with Neil Brown at the helm. We'll have to see what the future holds, but it's going to be, if nothing else, a very interesting next few weeks for Mountaineer Nation, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Gregory Kurg here chiming in late. Appreciate you hopping in. Gregory says, I can't wait until we fire Neil Brown and then fire his replacement in another 3 or 4 years. Then we can hire another coach that we will fire in 3 or 4 years. Exactly. That's one of the arguments for keeping him. You don't want to get into this cycle of where you're cycling coaches every 3 or 4 years and you get down and it just continues to push you further and further down. And so that's kind of the issue right now where I talked about earlier Shane Lyons being stuck between a rock and a hard place. And that's because West Virginia football program as itself right now is also stuck between that rock and that hard place. So I don't disagree with you, Gregory Krug, rather. I see what you're getting at there for sure. So like I said, it's going to be interesting next few weeks and, interesting next couple of years for the program altogether. But we'll be here to cover it all along the way on the Country Roads webcast. Pulled our names up here so you could see Brad there, Big Bubba Brad CRW. That's his Twitter handle. Follow him on there. Covers WV recruiting for us, on the football side here for the Country Roads webcast and does a great job. You can find our Twitter at WVU Country Roads. I run that. I do some live tweeting during game days. I was tweeting all throughout the game today. I try and do that, every Saturday that I can. And we give plenty of coverage on the Mountaineers, throughout. So if you want to give us a follow, please do. I got, a snap count series that I do that'll be out soon for this game. Player grades will be out. And then, of course, our podcast, our long form episodes there that we do for the CRW podcast. We do recap and preview episodes of each game. You can check that out as well. So we do plenty of content if you want to follow us at the Country Roads webcast that me and Bradley are a part of. As far as here at the West Virginia post game, we're appreciative of Mark Rogers and the voice of college football here for letting us host it on the West Virginia side. And in turn with that, we're trying to grow up the West Virginia channel at the Voice of College Football. So please subscribe to that if you haven't already. Trying to get it up there to 1,000 subscribers, and we're getting close. So subscribe to it if you haven't. We'll be back here on this channel next week to talk about the Iowa State game, rather, post game from that one, and hopefully it's a win instead of a loss in this case, as the Mountaineers fall to TCU 41-31 to drop to 3-5 on the season and 1-4 in conference play. But there will be plenty of other West Virginia football coverage released on this West Virginia channel as well. So no reason not to subscribe to it if you're a fan of the Mountaineers. Moving forward, you'll see us. You'll see other faces like Mountaineer Paul, Golden Blue Dude, Coos, Travis Kenobi, and of course Mark Rogers himself at the Voice of College Football, who we're all really appreciative of. A lot of great people that cover college football and cover the Mountaineers specifically here at the West Virginia channel. Having said that, Brad, any final thoughts before we close up this post-game show for TCU on the West Virginia channel here at the Voice of College Football?
Nah, man, I think I got it all off my chest.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'd agree with that as well. Mountaineers came out, hard fought effort. They played the number 7 team in the nation tough. Ultimately, don't have enough at the end. The Horned Frogs defeat the Mountaineers 41-31. But there will be, brighter days in the future. Let's hope. Still 4 games remaining on the West Virginia schedule. We'll be covering them all along the way, as will all the other faces here at the West Virginia channel with the Voice of College Football Network. So be on the lookout for that. I'm sure post-game stuff coming from this TCU game. We appreciate you guys tuning into the post-game show. We'll be back next week for the Iowa State post-game show. Having said that, I'm Jordan Cruz for Bradley. And until next time, let's go, Mountaineers.